Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ask the Experts webinar for March 5th. Holy mackerel, where's the time going? In any case, as most people who would be listening to this either live on the webinar or who are listening to the recording that's going to be posted after the webinar, that will show up on the First Canada YouTube channel. Most people, I think, realize that we just finished week 1, our event at Durham College. We're going to do a little bit of recap and look a little bit forward. And as always, it's pretty low key. We'll certainly be eager to hear what you have to say. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box and we'll get to them as we go through. Don't wait for us to ask you. Go right ahead and ask any questions you have, even if it takes us off where we thought we were going to go with the webinar. So please feel free. Today we have with us to chat is Eric Lee, who was at the event. I did see him a few times. I was there too. And just a little bit about Eric, and he can add to what I have up there. But Eric Lee is, in fact, the lead mentor of Team 6867, which is a second-year team from John Polani School in the Toronto District's Toronto District School Board, and he is the former lead mentor of Team 188, one of the many mentors that have been involved with Team 188, because of course, it is the original FIRST Robotics team in Canada. So welcome, Eric.
Thanks, Paul.
Do you have any more to add to your bio? Can you tell us a little bit maybe more about you? Do you actually teach at the school or you just do robotics?
I am a teacher at John Polani, math and science, physics, and guidance counselor. But this is now what I want to say my 12th year involved in FRC and robotics. It's been very excited to be able to start a new team. I mean, coming from 188, it's been a great pleasure to work with a team that has been so established. But getting to start a new team is really exciting, and getting to work with some really great kids at John Polani. I am a co-lead mentor actually with John Toffley at JPCI, and he does a lot of the technical things, and we have another mentor, a great FRC alum, and it's a great team. Brian Riskina, I hope I didn't butcher that last name. The three of us are really excited to work with a great group of kids, and lots of amazing things have been happening for us.
Well, just tell us what some of those are, in case people don't know.
So last year was our rookie year. Not super expecting that much to really set us apart, but we had a great robot that was very reliable, durable, and that really set the tone for the year, or for the season, sorry. It was a low-level switch pot, and it was just very dependable. And in our first regional at Durham College, we paired up with Alpha Dogs, and they saw something in us that we didn't actually see for ourselves, and lent us that strategy of taking from the human station, and made our robot really, really cycle very fast and become a great defensive robot. We ended up winning Rookie All-Stars there and getting finalists in our rookie year. That was amazing. Kids were so ecstatic, and they learned so much from the event and throughout the season. Then the next event after that at York University, a great event, and we saw great success, not quite as much compared to our first event, participating at qualifying for Ontario District Championships and performing well, but not getting selected there. But the fact that the best part about it was that we didn't win, we weren't selected, we did the best we could. The kids left there smiling and had a great season, and that was an amazing experience. Now in our sophomore year, looking to have pretty much the same experience, performing really, really well with a very dependable robot at Durham District event. And even though we lost in 2 straight matches in the finals, kids were all smiles and they were super proud of themselves, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, it was if you haven't been to Durham Live, it really is Durham College event. It really is an amazing event. The energy in that building was incredible, as it usually is. But yeah, it was pretty exciting to be there. So that's good. Thank you, Eric, for that brief history of Team 68, 67. It sounds like there's going to be lots of good things. So just a couple of quick stats about Durham College. So the event was on March 1st to 3rd. March 1st was the load-in day in the afternoon from 2:30 to 4:30, and then obviously the competitions were on the 2nd and the 3rd. And just in case you're not aware, sometimes the events will have competition days on the Saturday, Sunday, as this case did, or sometimes they're on Friday, Saturday. And I'm sure as we get a little bit bigger and we have to have back-to-back events at the same venues, we may have events that go Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So we'll see how that goes in the future. But I know that there are a few events around the world where that does happen, where they have multiple regionals or multiple district events just like that. And as I said, it was a week one event. This is one of the largest of district events in Ontario with 40 teams. There were two former world. Oh, sorry. Well, I say former. 610 was a former world champ. They were a world champ, I believe, 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And 2708 is a current world champion. So that was pretty exciting. They're both great teams, very entertaining in their own right, and certainly two of the more enthusiastic teams at this event. They have large groups with them, so that was fantastic for sure. Now, everybody was wondering what was going to happen when it was played. What did you think was going to be the gameplay? How did you think it was going to go, Eric?
When we broke down the game, my strategy lead head of strategy, Noam Gaboa, looked at the game and saw that it really wasn't going to be a single item was going to clearly take the game. As last year we had the scale, and that was going to be the centerpiece of the field. And this game is super interesting in the fact that it has three very different game pieces or elements. You have the hatches and the cargo in the two different locations, the rocket and the cargo ship, and then you have the end game of the hab. Starting with the simplest one, the hab, you know that everybody's going to try and do something with it. I like the fact that I saw different teams reaching within their means, and they focused on some things, but then didn't try and climb too high. So the teams that did the level 2 climb, it was great, and some teams that were phenomenal and could climb up to level 3, it was amazing. But some teams focused on just the hatch and the cargo, and you could see that in their mechanisms and gameplay, and they still completed the level 1 climb at the end of the game. Now, what we thought was really going to happen was a little bit more emphasis on the cargo. So because a lot more teams were not going to be able to really reach high and cycle really fast on the upper levels of the rocket. And that really did show through. And the majority of the points scored in this the district event was on the cargo ship, especially with the preloads and being able to finish those off during the sandstorm. And then being able to pop on some hatches on the cargo ship or the low level of the rocket and get some of the cargoes in there. We suspected that some defense was going to be played, but didn't really think that it was going to be as critical and game-changing as it was. Defense was played amazingly well by quite a few teams at this district event, and it led to game-changing and standing-changing results.
To full disclosure here, where I was stationed for many hours, I didn't really get a good glimpse of the field. But I also think in some cases it was hard to see parts of the field even if you were playing. But did you think that the defense that was being played was because that was original strategy of a team, or was it because they were having problems? Because many week one events, teams have lots of difficulties with some of the things they thought they could do, but they all can drive. What
Mm-hmm.
What do you think was the reason for the amount of defense?
The amount of defense was definitely a sort of impromptu decision, in my opinion. It's every team comes in hoping to score, hoping to participate in the various aspects of the game. I don't think there was a team that really dedicated their robot strictly to the defense. We actually had some discussions upon purely defensive robots and some really interesting prototypes or conceptual designs that we were thinking about that would be pretty hilarious and interesting to see. But unfortunately, a lot of the defensive strategy was an afterthought. But some teams really did excel in it, and their drivetrains were either quick and maneuverable or powerful enough to play really strong defense. And I think we're going to see maybe some teams really utilizing that strategy to their benefit in future matches, in future events. But it just depends on whether or not they're going to give up their role in scoring cargo hatches and just trying to focus on defense.
So maybe a lot of people don't know this because they haven't coached, or are you the coach on the field when your team plays?
Actually, I'm proud to say my strategy head, Noam Gabo, is also our drive coach. So it's a student who's running our drive team.
And did you always do it that way?
It was a model that I wanted to implement, but this is coming from 188. There's such a long tradition and such a strong cadre of mentors that it's just that it was a very powerful tradition to change. And so starting a new team, I know that it's not necessarily a very good skill or strength of mine to be a drive coach. And I found a student who I believed had good ability to lead the students. Last year was Gavin Corden. This year was Noam Gaboa. Mm-hmm. Both of them were very encouraging to the drivers and made a good team. This year, I think this is a good combination for this year, and it's working. I'm very proud of what the students can do, and they rise to the challenge.
That's good to hear. What did you think the scoring was going to be like? Because I think in talking with Mark Bredner beforehand, we both thought that there would be games where there might be 0-0 at the end, and that didn't happen. What were your expectations of how the scores were going to be in this week one event?
I knew it wasn't going to be as high scoring a game as last year, so in that sense, maybe it wouldn't be as exciting. But we're seeing lots of teams actually able to slap on the hatches and drop some cargo in, or dash out during the sandstorm period and cover up, drop the hatch and then trap the cargo in there. There were teams that were going to be able to do that. I was worried a little bit that some teams weren't going to be able to cycle as fast as they will be by the end of week 6. Mm-hmm. But I was fairly confident that some teams were going to be able to perform well and complete something. If at the very least somebody in any match is going to be able to drive off a level 2 hab, and I was worried we were going to see quite a few broken high grips wheels.
It's interesting. I think we talked a little bit about this, how it lived up to expectations, but what were the surprises that you saw in terms of maybe the scoring or the gameplay, or what some teams were using as strategy, or how difficult or easy it might have been for teams to play the game, the actual game?
I always expect week 1 events to be either a little slow paced or big revelations, realizing some teams try something halfway through the event and then all of a sudden realizing, oh man, this is going to be the new strategy for the rest of the event and then possibly the rest of the season. but I didn't actually expect that defense was going to be so impactful. I guess it's because of the little bottleneck formed by the between the rocket and the cargo ship,
Hmm.
that it really does become a possibility for a robot to oscillate back and forth between where the between the hab and the rocket, and be able to shut down access to very significant pieces parts of the field. One of the actual funny conceptual designs that we had was like with the 120-inch perimeter, you could make a very, very long, quick bot that basically serves as a brick breaker bar that bounces robots back off of it so that it can't make it to either the human station or the rocket and the cargo ship. So if there are defensive bots that are built, they could be very, very effective. We didn't actually expect that they would be as effective as it was.
Do you think that might have been because I know Polanyi was hosting a practice field. Do you think it was? And I've been to many practice fields, and almost never is an actual game played. Teams are testing things and running around. Do you think that's maybe why no one realized that it was going to be so tight? If they'd actually played some games, that they might have found that was the case.
Obviously, if there's an opportunity and interest to run practice matches, I would always push for it. Unfortunately, always, even with the practice field, right up until the end of the build season, or the 6-week build period, everybody's basically scrambling and testing out things, wanting to finish things up right before bag. We did actually have at the practice field at JPCI the ability to have a few robots that were pretty well completed, almost ready to go, and we did run a couple of practice matches, and it was pretty exciting to see. Granted, nobody really pushed it as hard as we see in events, just because you don't want to end up breaking something and then having to bag it and then not sure if you could finish the robot at the event.
Right.
But we did see some practice happening and run a few practice matches, and people were quite happy with the strategies that they had already come in with. If we could aim to have that, and granted with next year's no bag dates, could be really exciting to see that if teams are willing to self-enforce that 6-week design and build period, and then give their actual drivers and programmers time to access the robot to complete autonomous modes or get drive practice in, we could have more effective strategies being implemented right away from week one.
That's interesting. I think you're probably right about that. But one question I would ask of you, since you've had that practice field there a couple of years now, and you were with 188 for so long, how important is it for teams to have an opportunity to drive their robots on a field that has the game elements? Because a lot of teams don't take advantage of that.
And it's disappointing because I know a lot. We ourselves put in a lot of work to make the game elements, and First Canada was so generous in helping us out with the game pieces that it was a huge boon to teams that were able to come and practice and drive on the field and see the game elements. It's a huge advantage for teams, and I really wish teams would make more of an effort to take advantage of it, because you can figure out things that you didn't know. Lots of people make the kit rocker base and they're able to drive it around, but they don't get to play around with anything. Maybe if they decide and realize that maybe a bit of a pushing game is what they want to try, changing up the wheels and testing it out on the carpet, and being able to realize that, oh, we think the height is right and we're trying to drop our cargo in, but with the very sort of not sharp, but sharp corners basically, edges on there, maybe it might get caught or not really drag over, or
Hmm.
seeing the different game pieces, the cargoes are inflated and there's so much variation to them. Being able to work with the hook and loop tape on the hatch panels, maybe they might realize that it's a bit more difficult to pull it out of the human station or a little easier than they expected. They don't get to really test this out in the shop unless they build those field elements.
Right.
But
And
First Canada ensures that there's quite a few places where they can actually test this out. So teams really should take advantage of it.
well, it's really amazing. As a first senior mentor, we have meetings down in the States in June, and I just assumed that everybody all over the United States had access to practice fields, but I found that that was not the case. Many people were telling me that the teams in their region, the first time they'd actually be able to practice their autonomous on a real field was at their first competition. And if your first competition is your only competition, those are long odds. So the fact that we have practice fields in St. Catharines and Hamilton and Oakville and North York and a couple of places, and this year in Kingston and Huntsville, is a tremendous advantage to all the teams in Ontario that can, as you say, have the discipline to build their robots in a timely fashion and get out to the practice field. Because I know it was, I think it was Gary Page of the Cybergnomes and the Jabberwockies has said even a mediocre robot that's gotten lots of driving practice will do well, and you can always add to it after that.
Absolutely, I agree. We actually ended up with a rookie driver this year, taking a grade 9 student, and being able to have the practice field there and have her churn out cycles did wonders for her experience and confidence, and she did amazing at the event. One thing that I want to say is that at practice fields, typically those elements and game pieces are First Canada does an amazing job and makes sure that those are ready basically by week 2 or week 3. Teams that are still designing and looking to prototype come and visit one of the practice fields, and you can see and really get a sense of the field and be able to explore it. I know they had the VR experience, but nothing beats being able to just take a few measurements, get down right onto the field, and bring your prototypes and test things out.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
so what I was going to say, it's a great point, because I think people who haven't taken their teams to practice fields maybe assume that everybody's there with a built robot completed, and they're just running up and down the practice field the whole time. But that's not exactly what happens.
Mm-hmm. In all honesty, the first real effective use of the practice field that my team made was we had our students enact a game, and the humans were the robots, taking game pieces by hand and role-playing out the strategy to figure out what was really to figure out if our design priorities were actually accurate and if we needed to adjust anything.
Mm-hmm. So, a question for you, Eric: were there any upsets at Durham College?
This one, well, there was one for me, and it was actually a bit personal for me because we played my team, 6867, played 2 matches against my former team, 188, in qualification rounds back to back, and we were defeated handily in both of them. And then after the Alliance selection, realizing that we were very fortunate to be picked up by the 7th seeded Alliance, or the 7th Alliance captains, the Waffles, realized that on the second Alliance, there is 188, and we were going to go head to head in the first round of the quarterfinals. And it was conflicting for me because you never want your previous team to do bad, and you're always cheering for them. But then when you go against them in your current team, it's just very difficult.
So,
but the upset for me was
what happened with that? Like, did the second Alliance beat you?
It was quite exciting because in our first match of the quarterfinals, match 1, the 7th Alliance defeated the second Alliance, and it happened quite by a large margin. And I didn't see it personally because I got tunnel vision on how my kids were performing. That there was a field fault. Unfortunately, one of the hatch panels got stuck in the human station, and it shut down basically half of the Red Alliance's field and scoring potential. Luckily, there was the head refs and all the refs and made the good call and realizing that this was going to make a huge impact and prevent them from really performing as well as they could. And they called it a field fault and they replayed the match. Obviously, I was shocked. It's like, oh no, we had the one win and we have to play it again. But with good intentions and a fair playing field for everybody, and then we replayed the first match and we won the second first match by a really close margin, and it was really heart pounding in the chest, and then pulled it off again in the second match and ended up moving on to the semifinals. And it was a bit bittersweet to see 188 knocked out in the first round, but it was amazing to see the pride in my current team's students' faces, and everybody was going wild. It was a great match.
So the seventh alliance, your alliance with the Waffles and 4525 from St. Thomas, I believe, beat the second alliance, and then you went into the semifinals to play the third alliance, right? And that was the end of the upset?
It was a little bit of an upset because we kept going and it was amazingly strong. Renaissance Robotics was playing an amazingly powerful defense. They were a force to be reckoned with. They were shutting down hatch attempts, and cargo was being dropped out of position. And the game is very, very volatile in the sense that the scoring has to be fairly precise, and just getting nudged off the target just by a little bit holds up teams by so much that defense was super, super effective and very important. And the amazing alliance with Waffles dropping the cargo and my robot, 687's robot, being able to drop the hatches very consistently and at a good pace led us to taking the semifinals as well. That was not expected, and my kids were so ecstatic, and my voice has only barely recovered from the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for being with us in spite of that, your weakened voice. But what I did want to mention, and I'm going to drag over a different screen to point this out, is that if you haven't seen the Blue Alliance, if this is something you haven't looked at, you should, because it's going to list all the events for every week. And you can check to see who's in your event that's upcoming and maybe talk to them and see what they do. But it also will show the results. So here's the one that we're talking about, the Ontario District event at Durham College. And you can see they have the rankings and so forth. And just as an aside, the little arrows here indicate that there's video of that match. So you can watch video. And there'll be more posted as it goes along. But the thing down here is you can see in the playoffs, here's Eric's team along with 4476 the Waffles and 4525 Renaissance Robotics and their climb to the finals. The reason I mention this is because if you look at the other events, I won't go through too many of them, but even, let's say the Montreal event, this is actually kind of typical. There were almost no other upsets where a 7 beat a 2, or there were a couple of 5 beating 4s, but they were amazingly consistent. And the reason I bring this up is because in Eric's case, with Eric and the other teams that were competing with him, perhaps they're onto something, and maybe teams should be contacting them to find out exactly what was the strategy that was so successful for a 7 to beat a 2 and then a 7 to beat a 3 when it didn't seem to be happening that I could find. It may have happened in week 1 somewhere else, but I didn't see it. So that might be something that you might want to get involved with as you head to your next event. So I'm going to guess, Eric, you're not competing this week at Humber College.
Going to take a little bit of a break and recuperate.
That sounds like a great idea. However, I will be there, as will many of the First Canada people that were also at that event at Durham College, at the very first Humber College event. So this is the newest event in Ontario, newest district event. 32 teams, 6 rookie teams, and I think there were 6 rookie teams at the event at Durham College. And there is one team from the United States, from Team 2405 from Fruitport, Michigan. So in case you don't know, what happens is that all the district teams will go to 2 events in Ontario, but then there might be some open spots after that, and then teams from Ontario could go to a 3rd event, or teams from around the world, including in this case Michigan, could apply to for a 3rd play, and that would be it. So obviously the team from Fruitport has done exactly that. What are you expecting is going to happen now at Humber College, for example, Eric? What do you think is going? Because people are paying close attention, obviously.
I think some lessons were learned. Defense, we might see a lot more defense. A lot of teams may have realized that the rocket really wasn't completing the rocket for the RP isn't a simple task, and completing that in due time and potentially while defense is being played against you is going to be quite difficult. I think at Durham, the rocket during the qualification rounds was only completed once, and the efforts to complete that actually led to too much time being spent focusing on it, and the alliance that completed the rocket actually lost the match, which is super unfortunate when they could have had those 4 RP. It was actually predicted that we might see the first 4 RP match in that matchup. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out, but in this next regional at Humber, we have some powerhouses. We have lots of teams that they are great pedigrees, and they have great robots. I've been privileged to have a few of them at the practice field at Polanyi and see them in action. That's the Iron Bears and Warp 7. But you take a look at the different teams that you're going to have there. We always cheer for SWAT 771. They're a great tradition and great team. Iron Bears are looking good. Warp 7, also TDSP team, is looking great. 907, the Cybernauts, they always have a great robot and perform very well. Of course, we have 1114 Symbotics, Hall of Fame team that everyone is always excited to see, and we know that they're going to have a great result and put on a great show. 1310 is also rising up in the ranks, and Runnymede Robotics going to have this great robot, and they're trying to do and accomplish so much of the game that is really going to be exciting to see how these teams will pair up and whether or not we're going to see that first 4 RP match in Ontario and be able to have that added to the complex strategy of this game. Naki and Dave as well, Makeshift. There's so many robots that are going to be
great field,
potentially robots that do it all. And when you have robots that can potentially do every aspect paired together, we might see a completed rocket and cargo ship and maybe even more.
So you can be guaranteed that all those teams that you described, if they weren't at Durham, and I saw many of those ones you described that were there scouting, if they weren't, they were watching the live stream, and all the events are live streamed. This is the link. There'll be a link through the First Robotics Canada website. This is one that I was given today, so I'm putting it out there, but you can go on that and find it. And even if they weren't there live, I don't recall seeing anybody from Makeshift, but I'm sure they were watching, and I'm sure they were talking to people that were there, and they're making a strategy based on that. So, and based on what Eric has said and how it worked out for his team, his alliance with 4476 and 4525, you can be guaranteed that they're feverishly thinking of strategies from all of those teams on how the game can play. And who knows, they might have come up with a strategy that we haven't seen before. It reminds me, Eric, of that strategy that you came up with, I think, in North Bay that I hadn't seen for the big ball game, where you were going in the low goal when everybody thought it had to be the high goal, and just running through that competition. It was pretty amazing to see.
It was. I cannot take credit for that. That was an incredible strategy. That year was that G to decide, I believe, or that's so many years. There's so many people that have gone through the 188. But they had a great strategy that year. And sometimes it's not all about getting the tallest, shiniest fruit at the top of the tree. The low-hanging fruit, sometimes if you can cycle that through effectively and efficiently, you do one thing really, really well, like that might be the defining feature of your robot, but that might complete the winning alliance.
Well, it's certainly going to be interesting to see what's going to happen this weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Maybe I'll have a better view of the field this week. I've been to Humber College to watch basketball many years ago, and it's in that venue, and it's got some great sight lines. So we'll see what's going to happen. I know everybody at Humber College is super excited for this, and so is First Canada to be associated with them, and as we all were with. Every time we go to Durham College, it's been a fantastic event. So congratulations once again, Eric, and thank you very much with your hoarse voice, taking the time to come out and talk with us and to give the benefit of all the things that you learned from that event to all those people that are listening right now or are going to be listening on the YouTube recording on the First Canada YouTube channel. And as always, if anybody has any questions, anybody has any concerns, wants to know more, please feel free to contact me at pkeenan@firstinspires.org, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have or put you in touch with someone who can answer it better than I can. So once again, Eric, thank you very much, and good luck. What's your next event?
We're competing at Ryerson.
Oh, that's going to be exciting. Yeah, that's a great event as well. Old Maple Leaf Gardens, if you haven't been there, it's pretty spectacular. People my age can remember it very well.
To everybody heading to the Humber College event, please make sure you check out Paul at the swag shop. If he doesn't have a great sight line to the field, keep him updated. Maybe set him up with the live stream so you can keep in touch with what's happening. And he always loves saying hi to everybody.
Yeah, it's a great thing. First Canada. One thing I'm looking forward to is the Georgian College event, because I think there's going to be 6 teams from the States, and they love that First Canada hoodie and ball caps and stuff. So it'll be nice to see them. I think we have the Robo Dogs coming up from Granville, Michigan, and they're a great group. 3 teams from the one school. It's amazing. So Thanks again, Eric, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, have a good night. This is going to be a great season, I think. Good luck to all the teams, and wish everybody the best of luck.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.